meantime, we're going to continue to keep strong the sanctions. We're going to continue to provide the Ukrainian military with their capacity to defend themselves.
In her debut in the press briefing room,
I know I am not the redhead you're accustomed to seeing at this podium.
White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield struck a more skeptical tone, warning her global audience not to be fooled by Russia's announcement.
We believe any movement of forces from around Kyiv is a redeployment and not a withdrawal, and the world should be prepared for a major offensive against other areas of Ukraine.
Earlier, the president had told Lee Russian aggression threatens not just Ukraine and Europe, but Asia and the Indo-Pacific.
And it's attacking the core tenets of a rule-based international order. Borders can't be changed by force, and all the nations, large and small, are equal and sovereign in the rights for their sovereignty.
Singapore hopes that the United States, amidst all its many preoccupations, will continue to deepen its relationship with countries in Asia Pacific, China certainly, but also other countries besides China.
The U.S. and Singapore signed a memorandum of understanding back in 1990 that provided for the U.S. military to enjoy access to Singapore's air and naval bases. That memorandum was extended for another 15 years during the Trump administration. At the White House, James Rosen.
James Rosen, thank you for your reporting.
Now we'd like to welcome Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne. Congresswoman, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you. How are you guys doing this evening?
Hey, doing great. Glad to have you here. You know, we have just seen a mountain of evidence as to why Joe Biden isn't fit to lead, and that explains these new poll numbers. There's a poll out from Hart Research and NBC News. It shows Biden's approval tanking down to 40%. That is the lowest of his presidency so far. More than half the country right now disapproves of him. And in that same poll, 8 out of 10 Americans say that they have very little confidence in his ability to handle the conflict between Russia and Ukraine without raising our gas prices or getting us into a nuclear war. Your reaction?
Well, I want to know who those 40% are that still approve. You know, I mean, you think about from day one of this administration, Republicans have been very much letting people know what the side effects or the ramifications are going to be of his policies. From day one of shutting down the expansion of the Keystone Pipeline, we have said this is going to have ramifications to not only the U.S. not being energy independent, but to our allies across the world. We are empowering China. You're empowering Russia. When we saw the botched debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan, we warned this is what happens with a weak administration. And you are going to see countries like Russia go into Ukraine and possibly China go into Taiwan. When we have seen what happened with this administration threatening Title I and get rid of the Remain in Mexico policy, Republicans said from day one, when you have these policies, when you remove them, you are going to see a number of folks coming over, illegal activities happening at the border, fentanyl coming in at record levels. All of that now has been witnessed. It's not just us warning that these things are going to happen, but seeing them and working families feeling them every day.
Yeah, that's a great point. We also know that Biden's communications team, they have no control over him. I've never seen anything like this. I used to work in the comms department at the White House. And it's very clear that as much as they try to make sure that he stays on the talking points, in fact, they gave him note cards with talking points, and they only let him call on pre-approved reporters. But today, his press team, it was interesting, Congresswoman, they kind of admitted it. Listen to this real quick.
Well, I can tell you from working for President Biden for 7 years that only President Biden decides what President Biden is going to say.
President Biden has no idea what he wants to say. It's so bad, and he really struggles with even putting a sentence together. I mean, Congresswoman, is this fixable in any way for Biden?
Can you imagine trying to be a head of a foreign nation and working with this administration, where you've got the president that says one thing, is completely indecisive, and then you've got members of his cabinet, members of his comms team going back and cleaning up? Who is in charge? Who is actually making these decisions? Because you've got the president saying one thing, you've got cabinet members saying something else. Is it Blinken that's in charge? Is it Is it the president who's making these decisions? You don't know. It's completely indecisive. It's weak. We're following other nations. And one of our Texas delegation members said Biden is like an elephant in a parade. Somebody's constantly having to follow him to clean up. And that's just what gaffe after gaffe. And it would be one thing if it was amusing or if it was funny, but this has deadly consequences. When you were looking at the gaffes that he has made this week alone, what that says about our foreign policy and all of these other countries that are following the lead of our foreign policy. And we just can't seem to keep it together, but you've got a president who's now threatening Putin not staying in control. Now, that may or may not be his personal wish, but when you're in front of a camera, that's not anything that you share. You don't share military strategy with the world because you have an oops moment. We've seen 4 of them this week, and it would be humorous if it wasn't so deadly.
Yeah. And it's been an oops year, to say the least. I mean, obviously, he's been to the Ukraine border, everybody pointing out that he hasn't been to our southern border. And Congresswoman, I got to say, I hope one day we'll have you on and we won't be talking about the situation at the border. I hope we'll be saying how secure it is. But the country has been, very against Biden in his handling of the crisis at the southern border. The poll that came out that I just mentioned earlier, his rating dropped a whopping 9% among Latino voters. They're not happy with how he's handling this and letting everybody into the country. And now we have our border crisis colliding with the crisis in Ukraine. Vice World News reported today that a group of 35 Russian citizens camped out at the southern border for a week. Then they were quietly accepted into America in a secret deal with Mexican officials. I mean, crossings are already on pace right now to double what we saw last year. When does this end?
Well, I think when you see an administration that takes it seriously, when American citizens stand up and say enough is enough, you're seeing at the southern border right now. We've got fentanyl as the #1 killer of adult Americans under 45 because it's coming in from the border, being manufactured in China. And you think about the struggles that working families are having right now as a direct result of the policies from this administration. Unseen inflation that we haven't had in decades, rising gas costs, low supply chain, problems getting just labor into businesses, getting kids back to school and what's happening in our schools. And then you have a president who comes out with a budget 2 months late, I might add, that is completely unrealistic. It's ignoring all of the priorities that Americans across the country have for Green New Deal programs that are not going to help people today, that are going to further hurt our economy, further hurt our security. And a president who seems completely out of touch with reality, out of touch with the priorities of working Americans, and just completely out of touch with our foreign policy. It's dangerous. And I think what you're going to see is in November, a lot of people are going to come that maybe have supported him in the past are going to come and they're going to vote in Republicans to try to get control back into the American people and out of the federal government.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And even the pollster in the article about this poll said they're basically handing it the election to the Republicans. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, always a pleasure. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. Experts are warning the current 40-year inflation high will only get worse. See how to protect your IRA with gold. Get a free info kit like this one at birchgold.com/Newsmax. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Just get your free info kit at birchgold.com/Newsmax.